"By tomorrow dawn it will all be over," my son's wife said through the open window, and I froze behind that woodpile, realizing she was talking about murdering him. I'm Martha Brennan, 62 years old, a frontier widow they called nothing. For 5 years, Victoria had turned my rancher son against me with sweet lies. I'd made myself small, stayed quiet, thinking that's what good mothers do. But that morning in 1888, Wyoming hidden behind rough timber while she confessed to 8 months of arsenic poisoning, I discovered something I didn't know I had. So I set a trap. She had no idea this widow knew how to fight back. Have you ever been dismissed as too old or nothing, only to prove them devastatingly wrong? Tell me in the comments, then stay with me as I reveal exactly how I brought her down. Subscribe so you don't miss it. But let me take you back to where it all started 1 week before that terrible morning when everything still seemed peaceful. The leather was soft under my fingers that morning, worn smooth from years of use, just like my hands. 62 years of Wyoming frontier living had left their mark on me, same as wind and sun carved lines into the land itself. I sat by my cabin window mending an old saddle strap old EZ had brought me. Dawn light painted the eastern sky gold and pink, the kind of morning that made you grateful to be alive even when your bones ached and your cabin felt too empty. Through the wavy glass, I could see the main ranch house on the rise, the house Thomas and I built with our own hands 30 years back, when Jamie was a baby tied to my back while I mixed mortar. The house I'd signed over to my son 8 years ago after Thomas died under spooked horses, because that's what a mother does. Wood smoke drifted through my window, mixing with pine scent and summer grass. Cattle lowed by the creek. This was my world had been since I followed my husband west in 58, full of foolish dreams and stubborn hope. I finished the strap and wrapped it in a flour sack. Best get this back to EZ, I murmured to myself, a habit picked up from living alone. Old EZ was mucking out the barn when I arrived, his weathered face breaking into a gap-toothed grin. "Fine stitching, Miss Martha," he said, examining my work. "Your mama taught you well. You eatin', yet Cookie's got biscuits up at the house." I hesitated. Victoria didn't much like me showing up at mealtimes, though she'd never say it outright. She had a way of making me feel like an intruder in the house I'd built. But I hadn't seen Jamie in near a week, and a mother worries. Maybe just for a minute? We walked toward the house, and that's when I saw him. My boy standing on the back porch with a cup in his hands, leaning against the post like he needed it to hold him up. His face had a grayish cast that made my heart squeeze tight. "EZ, how long has Jamie been looking poorly?" The old foreman's jaw tightened. "Couple months now. Says it's just working too hard. But I've known that boy since he was knee-high, and this ain't just tiredness." Victoria appeared in the doorway behind Jamie, blonde hair pinned neat green eyes, bright blue calico dress that probably cost more than I spent in 6 months. She slipped her arm around Jamie's waist, and he leaned into her like she was the only thing keeping him upright. "Jamie!" I called, climbing the steps. "Son, you don't look well. Have you seen the doctor?" He turned to me, and for a second I saw the boy who used to run to me with scraped knees. But then Victoria's hand tightened on his waist, and something shuddered behind his eyes. "Morning, Ma. I'm fine. Victoria's been taking good care of me." "Of course I have," Victoria said, voice sweet as honey. "I've been making sure he eats properly, gets his rest." She looked at me, then smiled, perfectly pleasant, perfectly cold. "But you shouldn't worry yourself, Mother Brennan. I'm sure at your age you have enough to concern yourself with at the cabin." "At your age?" The words cut like barbed wire. "I'm not so old I can't recognize when my son needs help," I said. "Jamie let me make you some willow bark tea." Victoria already made me something. Jamie interrupted, an edge to his voice I'd never heard directed at me. "Ma, I'm a grown man. I have a wife to look after me now. You don't need to mother me anymore." The words hit like a physical blow. "Of course," I managed. "I just worry." "Well, don't." Jamie's tone softened slightly. "I'm fine. Really." I walked back to my cabin as the sun climbed higher, that conversation sitting heavy in my chest like a stone. Something was wrong. I'd felt it for months now, that mother's instinct that screams danger when everyone else sees nothing. But what could I do? I had no proof. Just a feeling. Just the way Victoria's eyes went cold when she thought no one was watching. Just the way my son grew weaker while his wife smiled. That night, I lay in my narrow bed listening to coyotes howl in the distance, and I couldn't shake the image of Jamie's gray face, his trembling hands, the way he'd leaned on Victoria like a dying man leaning on his grave marker. I should have trusted that feeling. Because when dawn came, Lucas would ride hard to my door with news that would change everything. The hoofbeats came hard and fast through the dawn, the kind of riding that meant trouble. I dropped the coffee grinder and ran to the window. Through the mist, I saw Lucas on his mare, the horse lathered white with sweat foam flying from her bit. He pulled up so hard she nearly sat back on her haunches. Miss Martha. His face was white as creek stones. Jamie collapsed by the river. We brought him back, but he's bad, real bad. You need to come now. The world tilted. My son, my boy. Is he? I couldn't finish. Breathing but barely conscious. Mrs. Delgado's already there. Ma'am, please, he's asking for you. Asking for me. After months of distance, my son wanted his mother. I ran to the corral, threw the saddle on Copper with shaking hands that fumbled the cinch twice. Lucas wheeled his exhausted horse around, ready to ride back despite the animal's heaving sides. I'll be right behind you. I swung up, and Copper leaped forward before I'd gathered the reins. The morning mist turned everything ghostly gold and gray shapes that would have been beautiful if I could see past my terror. Collapsed. Barely conscious. Real bad. I thought of how pale Jamie had looked last week, how he'd leaned on Victoria like his legs wouldn't hold him. I thought of the coffee she'd made, the way she'd glanced toward the window. I should have said something. I should have trusted my gut. The quarter-mile felt like crossing the entire territory. Copper's breath came in great gasps, matching my own. My hands locked white-knuckled on the reins. Through the thinning mist, I saw the ranch house. Too many people in the yard, hands standing in worried clusters, horses tied everywhere. Old Easy was on the porch, hat in his hands, and that scared me more than anything. Easy never took his hat off except in church or at funerals. And there, tied to the rail, a sturdy bay mare with a Mexican saddle decorated with silver conchos. Rosa Delgado was here, the curandera, which meant someone thought this was serious enough to fetch the healer. I pulled Copper up hard and half fell from the saddle before she'd stopped. My boots hit earth and I stumbled, catching myself against a post. Jamie, I gasped, pushing toward the door. Where is he? A hand caught my arm, strong fingers calloused and sure. Rosa Delgado stared into my eyes, her face grave. Doña Martha, she said quietly, urgently. Wait, before you go inside, you must listen to me. My son is dying in there. I tried to pull away, but her grip was iron. Let me go. You need to hide yourself. She glanced toward the house, then back. What I saw in her eyes made my blood run cold. Come with me, behind the woodpile. There is something you must hear before you go to him. I don't have time. Trust me. Rosa's fingers dug into my arm. If you love your son, if you want to save his life, you will come with me now and be silent. Do you understand? I stared at her, heart hammering. My whole body wanted to run to Jamie and damn the consequences. But something in Rosa's face, some terrible knowledge, made me nod. She pulled me quickly around the house, past water barrels to the woodpile. Jamie's bedroom window was right above us, open to the morning breeze. Listen, Rosa breathed. And do not make a sound no matter what you hear. From inside, I heard Victoria's voice, cold, calculating, nothing like the sweet tone I knew. By tomorrow dawn, she was saying, it will all be over. Have you ever stood on the edge of a truth that would shatter your world, knowing that once you heard it, nothing would ever be the same? Did you step forward into that darkness, or did you turn away? Tell me, is ignorance ever truly mercy? I pressed my back against the rough wood of the house, Rosa's hand still gripping my arm like a vice. My heart hammered so loud I was sure they'd hear it through the walls. Victoria's voice drifted through the open window above us, cold and sharp as January wind. Nothing like the sweet tone she used with Jamie, nothing like the polite frost she gave me. This was something else entirely. By tomorrow dawn it will all be over, she repeated, and I heard a man's voice respond, unfamiliar, educated Eastern. You're certain the dosage is sufficient? We can't afford mistakes at this stage? I've been giving him arsenic in his morning coffee for 8 months, Mr. Blackstone. Just a pinch from the rat poison Chen sells at the trading post, small enough the doctors think it's bad water or stomach ailment. No one suspects a thing. The world stopped. Arsenic, 8 months, morning coffee. My knees buckled and Rosa caught me, her arm around my waist, the only thing keeping me upright. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. My mind was screaming, but my body had turned to stone. "And the property transfer?" the man Blackstone asked. "The deed is ready. I had it drawn up 3 months ago by that lawyer in Cheyenne, not you, someone who won't connect us. Once Jamie's heart gives out, I sign as his widow, you process the sale to that cattle baron from Texas, and we split $15,000. Cash, no banks, no records. 15,000. My husband's ranch. The land Thomas and I had bled for, built from nothing with our bare hands. The legacy we'd left our son. She was selling it like a used saddle." "What about the mother?" Blackstone asked, and my blood turned to ice. "Could she contest the sale, make legal claims?" Victoria laughed, actually laughed to sound like breaking glass. "That pathetic old woman, she thinks the ranch is Jamie's legacy, his birthright. She has no idea everything's in his name only. When we married, I made sure of that. She signed over the original deed to him years ago before I even arrived. Legally, she owns nothing. She is nothing. Nothing." Rosa's fingers dug into my side, holding me together when I wanted to fly apart. "The fool gave him everything," Victoria continued, her voice dripping contempt. "Her dead husband's money. What was it, $8,000? His life insurance, his savings, every penny. She handed it to Jamie to help him build his future. Then another $12,000 for the cattle business over the years. She lived in that pathetic little cabin wearing the same 3 dresses, eating beans and cornbread, while we dined on her money, and she smiled like it made her happy. $20,000. Every cent Thomas left me. Every dollar I'd saved from selling eggs, mending tack, taking in sewing. Gone. Given freely because I loved my son and wanted him to succeed. And she'd taken it all. Taken it and mocked me for giving it. She even gave us her dignity," Victoria said. "Do you know she apologized to me last week for being cold to me over the years, for not welcoming me properly into the family. She actually thinks she's the problem." I felt something crack inside my chest, something that had been holding me together for 5 years of small cruelties and careful smiles. "Brilliant manipulation," Blackstone said, admiration in his voice. "And you're certain about the timeline? The heart failure will appear natural." "Completely. He's been getting weaker for months, dizzy spells, nausea, irregular heartbeat. Rosa Delgado's been treating him with her herbs, but she thinks it's bad well water. Even she doesn't suspect. By tomorrow, maybe the day after, his heart will simply stop. Frontiermen die young all the time. No one will question it." Rosa's hand tightened on my arm, and I understood she had suspected. That's why she'd stopped me. That's why we were here, hidden like criminals, listening to my son's murder being planned in casual conversation. "And afterward," Blackstone pressed, "I play the grieving widow for 3 months, sell the ranch. Then I'm on the next stage to San Francisco with my share of the money. You'll never see me again, and neither will this godforsaken territory." "What about the old woman? Will she cause trouble after he's gone?" Victoria's voice went even colder. "I've spent 5 years poisoning Jamie's mind against her, telling him she's controlling, jealous, trying to break us apart. He barely speaks to her now. When he's dead, she'll have no legal standing and no emotional support from anyone who matters. I'll tell everyone she's senile, grief mad, making wild accusations because she can't accept that her precious boy chose me over her. Then I'll have Easy and the boys run her off the property. She'll die alone in some charity house in town, and no one will remember her name." My vision blurred. Tears, rage, heartbreak, I couldn't tell which. All I knew was that the woman I'd welcomed into my family, the woman I'd tried so hard to love for my son's sake, had been systematically destroying everything I held dear, and I'd let her. God help me, I'd smiled and stepped back and let her do it. Rosa pulled me away from the wall, her face fierce. "Now you know," she whispered. "Now we get proof. Have you ever suspected the worst about someone close to your family, then discovered the truth was even darker than you imagined? That moment when paranoia becomes vindication, does it feel like victory? Or does it just feel like drowning? Tell me, which is worse, being wrong about someone's evil or being right?" Rosa pulled me around the corner, away from that window and those voices that had shattered my world. My legs moved, but I couldn't feel them. "Doña Martha," Rosa gripped my shoulders. "I know you are breaking, but we cannot break yet. We must act now while they think no one knows. She's killing him. And now we stop her. Come." She led me to Victoria's room at the back of the house. My hands shook as I turned the doorknob. "They're still with Jamie," Rosa whispered. "We have minutes." The room smelled of Victoria's lavender perfume, Rosa went straight to the wardrobe, pulling down hat boxes with practiced efficiency. Here, she thrust a blue hat box into my hands. Open it. Inside, beneath a silk bonnet, was a tin. Rough on rats, the label proclaimed. Poison, contains arsenic. My breath stopped. She bought it from Samuel Chen, Rosa said, moving to the writing desk. 3 times in 8 months. He keeps records. Rosa extracted letters tied with string and handed them to me. I recognized the handwriting, Henry Blackstone's educated script. Deed transfer must be executed within 48 hours of death. Buyer in Texas confirmed. $30,000 sale price, your share $15,000. 30,000. My ranch, being sold for half its worth just to move quickly. Take these. Rosa pressed 2 glass jars into my hands. Inside was yellowish residue. Jamie's vomit. I saved samples because I suspected. I tested them arsenic. Definite. I stared at the proof in my trembling hands. But it's not enough, Rosa said. We need Sheriff Caleb. That's 4 hours away. I know. Can you keep her here? Pretend you know nothing while we wait? Could I look into Victoria's face and smile, knowing everything? The door opened. Old Easy stood there, his face grim. Saw you sneaking around. Figured you found something. She's poisoning Jamie, I said. Arsenic in his coffee. Ez's jaw worked, fists clenching. I knew it. Seen her buying poison from Chen 3 times. Told myself it was for rats, but he stopped. What do we do? Lucas, send him to town for Sheriff Caleb. Fast as he can ride. Tell him it's murder. Ease nodded, but I caught his arm. That's 4 hours there and back. Can you keep Henry Blackstone from leaving without being obvious? A fierce grin split his face. Wagon wheel can break real easy. Might take all day to fix. Do it. He disappeared. Rosa began replacing everything in Victoria's room exactly as we'd found it, except for the letters and 1 arsenic sample tucked into her medicine bag. Now the hard part, Rosa said. You must go into that room, see your son dying, look at the woman killing him, and pretend you know nothing. I can't. You can, Rosa gripped my hand. You are Martha Brennan. You survived the journey, West Indian raids, harsh winters, losing your husband. You built a ranch from nothing. You raised a son alone. You are stronger than she will ever be. Steel poured into my spine. 4 hours, I said. I keep her here 4 hours. Can you do it? I thought of Jamie lying in that bed, poison in his veins. I thought of all the years I'd stayed quiet, made myself small. I was done being small. Yes, Rosa squeezed my hand. Then go. May God give you strength to play the greatest role of your life. I walked to the door, wiped my eyes, smoothed my skirt. 1 deep breath. Then I opened the door and went to save my son. I pushed open the door and the sight nearly broke me. Jamie lay like a corpse, skin gray as ash. Lips cracked, chest barely rising. The room smelled of sickness and something bitter. Poison. Victoria sat beside him, holding his hand. When she saw me, her cold expression melted instantly. Tears welled in her eyes. Oh, Martha, thank God you're here. I've been so frightened. Every fiber of my being wanted to claw her eyes out. Instead, I let her embrace me, smelled the lavender perfume that now sickened me. What happened? My voice broke, not entirely acting. What did Rosa say? Bad water from the south well. Or overwork. Victoria wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. His heart is so weak. I'm terrified we'll lose him. You're terrified you'll lose your $15,000. I moved to Jamie's bedside, took his cold hand. My boy, I should have been here more. Should have visited. Martha, no. Victoria's voice was honey. You mustn't blame yourself. You've always been distant, but I know you love him. Distant because you made me unwelcome. I swallowed rage like broken glass. Victoria, if the worst happens. I paused as if the words hurt. I have money saved, about $800, and my cabin. I want you to have it all. Her eyes changed. Pure greed flashed before she covered it with protest. Oh, Martha, you don't need to. I do. I took her hands, forcing myself not to recoil. Your family. You've cared for my son. It's the least I can do. When I die, everything goes to you and Jamie anyway. Better to give it now. Victoria squeezed my hands, smile radiant. You're so generous. Jamie is lucky to have you as his mother. Lucky fool. I just want to help, I said meekly. I know I've been difficult. I want to make amends. Oh, Martha. She hugged me again. You're not difficult. Just set in your ways. When Jamie recovers, we'll be closer, like real family. When Jamie recovers. If he dies before the sheriff arrives. A knock interrupted. A tall man in an Eastern suit entered carrying a leather satchel. Henry Blackstone. Mrs. Brennan. I'm Henry Blackstone, land attorney from Cheyenne. I'm here to help Mrs. Victoria with legal preparations. Precautions, you understand. I showed confusion. Legal preparations, surely that can wait. Nothing to worry about, Mother Brennan, Victoria said quickly. Mr. Blackstone is being thorough, making sure affairs are in order. I nodded slowly, playing the simple frontier woman. Of course, you're both so practical, much smarter about these things than me. I'm just an old woman who doesn't understand business and papers. Victoria and Blackstone exchanged glances, relief in their eyes. They thought I was exactly what she'd claimed foolish, easily dismissed no threat. You're not foolish, Victoria said, patting my hand like I was a child. Just uncomplicated. It's refreshing. Uncomplicated, simple, stupid. Let them think it. Let them relax. Because in 2 hours, Sheriff Caleb would write up with the law. Then we'd see who was foolish. I settled into the chair, playing my part, worried mother, grateful mother-in-law, harmless old woman who knew nothing. Through the window, old EZ stood by the barn. He caught my eye and gave the smallest nod. The trap was set. Now I just had to keep them here. Time crawled like a wounded animal. I sat beside Jamie's bed, watching his chest rise and fall in shallow breaths, keeping up a steady stream of meaningless talk. Stories about his childhood, about the ranch, about anything that would fill the terrible silence and keep Victoria's attention on me instead of the window. Rosa came in every half hour or so, her face professionally concerned. I check his pulse, Donna Martha, make sure the fever no get worse. But I saw what she really did, slipping a cloth soaked in dark liquid between Jamie's lips when Victoria looked away, letting the medicine trickle into his mouth. Activated charcoal, she'd told me earlier, to absorb the poison still in his system. Each time Rosa left, I breathed a little easier. You must be thirsty, Mother Brennan, Victoria said sweetly, rising from her chair. Let me get you some coffee. Every muscle in my body went rigid. Rosa had warned me, don't eat or drink anything she gives you. She has poison. She might use it. Oh, that's kind, but I insist. Victoria was already pouring from the pot on the small stove in the corner. You've been here for hours. You need something warm. She handed me the cup, and I had no choice but to take it. The coffee was hot in my hands, steam rising. I lifted it to my lips, pretended to sip, then lowered it when Victoria turned to check on Jamie. Quick as a snake, I tipped the cup toward the potted plant beside my chair, letting the dark liquid soak into the soil. When Victoria glanced back, I was holding an empty cup. Thank you, dear. That was just what I needed. Another hour dragged past. Henry Blackstone grew increasingly agitated, pacing to the window and back, checking his pocket watch. Victoria, he finally said, voice tight. We should go to town. File the preliminary papers with the county clerk. We can't afford delays if... Not yet. Victoria's voice had an edge. Not until we're certain of his condition. But the buyer from Texas will wait. She shot him a look that could freeze water. We discussed this, Henry. I seized the moment. Tell me about how you met Jamie Victoria. I realize I never properly asked. Her face softened, the mask sliding back into place. She launched into a story I'd heard before, how she'd come west as a teacher, how Jamie had courted her at a church social, how they'd fallen in love under the Wyoming stars. All lies. I could hear it now, the way her voice changed on certain details, the way her eyes shifted when she talked about her family back east. The door opened and old EZ entered with a tray of sandwiches and coffee. Thought you folks might be hungry, he said gruffly. As he set the tray down, he leaned close to my ear. Lucas is back. Sheriff's coming up the road now. My heart slammed against my ribs, but I kept my face perfectly calm, reaching for a sandwich I had no intention of eating. Where are all the ranch hands? Victoria asked suddenly, standing and moving to the window. It's too quiet out there. Where is everyone? Probably giving us privacy, I said mildly. They're respectful that way when someone's ill. But Victoria's eyes had gone sharp, scanning the yard. Henry, look, there are men by the barn. Why are they just standing there? Henry joined her at the window, and I saw his face pale. Victoria, I think we should... The sound of hoofbeats cut him off. Multiple horses moving fast, the thunder of their approach unmistakable even through the walls. Victoria spun from the window, her face draining of color. For the first time since I'd known her, I saw real fear in her eyes. "Who is that?" she whispered. The hoofbeats stopped. Boots hit the porch. A heavy knock on the door. "Mrs. Victoria Brennan." A man's voice loud and official. "This is Sheriff Caleb Morrison. I need to speak with you immediately." Victoria's head whipped toward me, and in that instant the mask shattered completely. Her beautiful face twisted into something ugly, something hateful. "You!" she hissed. "You did this! You meddling old witch! How long can you hold a performance before the mask cracks? That exhaustion of pretending, of watching every word, every gesture, have you ever felt it? And when the truth finally exploded, was it relief or just a different kind of terror? The door burst open. Sheriff Caleb Morrison filled the doorway, a tall man with iron gray hair and a star pinned to his vest. 2 deputies flanked him, and behind them Rosa's determined face. "Mrs. Victoria Brennan," the sheriff said, his voice carrying the weight of the law. "I have testimony from multiple witnesses, physical evidence, and expert medical analysis indicating you have been systematically poisoning your husband with arsenic. I'm here to place you under arrest." Victoria's face went white, then red. "That's insane. I would never." She spun toward me, desperation in her eyes. "Martha, tell them this is some terrible mistake." I stood slowly, my legs shaking but my voice steady. "I heard you, Victoria, this morning. Through that window right there. You confessed everything to Mr. Blackstone. 8 months of arsenic in Jamie's coffee. The plan to sell the ranch. Everything." For a heartbeat, she just stared at me. Then her beautiful face twisted into something monstrous. "You were spying!" she shrieked. "You sneaking, meddling old hag, you had no right." "I had every right." Rosa stepped forward, her medicine bag in hand. "I have saved Jamie's vomit samples from the past 8 months, all showing arsenic poisoning. I have this." She held up the tin. "Found hidden in your room. Rough on rats, pure arsenic. And I have testimony from Samuel Chen at the trading post that you purchased rat poison 4 separate times." "I saw you," Old Easy said from the doorway, his voice hard as granite. 3 weeks ago. Saw you put something in Jamie's morning coffee. Thought it was sugar. Wasn't, was it?" Victoria's eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal. Henry Blackstone made a break for the door, but the deputies moved faster, blocking his path. Through the window, I could see ranch hands standing with rifles. "Wait," Henry's voice cracked. "I'll testify, I'll tell you everything. She planned it all, the poisoning, the land sale, everything. I just helped with the legal documents. I didn't know she was actually going to—" "You lying coward!" Victoria lunged at him, but Sheriff Caleb caught her arm. She spun on me instead, her face contorted with rage. "You think you've won? He'll never forgive you for this. When he wakes up, I'll tell him you made it all up, that you're a jealous old witch who couldn't stand to see him happy. He'll believe me. He always believes me." I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing but pity. It doesn't matter what he believes anymore. Justice doesn't depend on his opinion. It depends on evidence. And the evidence condemns you. Sheriff Caleb pulled a length of rope from his belt. "Victoria Brennan, by the authority of Wyoming Territory, you are under arrest for attempted murder of your husband, conspiracy to commit fraud and theft. You'll be held in Elk Ridge Jail until Circuit Judge Blackwood arrives for trial." He bound her wrists with quick, practiced movements. She fought like a wildcat, screaming curses that made the deputies flinch. "You'll rot for this, Martha. You'll die alone and forgotten. Nobody will remember your name." They dragged her toward the door, her feet scrambling for purchase on the wooden floor. Henry was already outside, babbling his confession to anyone who would listen. Through the window, I saw the whole town gathered, women with their hands over their mouths, men with grim faces, children peeking from behind their mothers' skirts. Everyone had come to witness frontier justice. My legs gave out, and Rosa caught me, her strong arms the only thing keeping me upright. "Is it over?" I whispered. "Is he safe now?" "Yes, mi amiga." Rosa's voice was thick with emotion. "You saved him. You saved your son." I turned back to the bed, to Jamie lying there so still and pale. And then, miracle of miracles, his eyelids fluttered. His lips moved. "Ma." The word was barely a breath, but it was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. My son was coming back to me. 3 days passed like a prayer I was afraid to finish. I never left Jamie's side. I sat in that chair by his bed, holding his hand, talking to him even when he couldn't answer. Rosa came every few hours with her teas and tinctures, spooning liquid between his lips, checking his pulse with her weathered fingers. The poison is leaving his body, she told me on the second day. The antidote is working, he will wake. And on the third morning, as dawn light painted the room gold, he did. His eyelids fluttered, his fingers tightened around mine. His lips moved, forming words that came out as barely more than breath. "Ma." I leaned close, tears already streaming down my face. "I'm here, son. I'm here." His eyes opened, those brown eyes I'd looked into since the day he was born. Confused at first, searching the room, then focusing on my face. "What happened?" His voice was rough as creek gravel. "Where's Victoria?" My heart clenched. This was the moment I'd been dreading. The moment I had to shatter whatever illusions he had left. "Jamie, there's something you need to know. Something terrible." I told him everything. The eavesdropping, the confession, the arsenic in his morning coffee for 8 months, the plan to sell the ranch, the lies about me, the arrest. I watched his face change with every word, watched the man I'd raised try to process a betrayal so complete it had nearly killed him. "No." He shook his head weakly against the pillow. "Not Victoria. She loved me. She took care of me. She made my coffee every morning. He stopped. His eyes widened. His hand went to his throat as if he could still taste it. "The coffee," he whispered. "Oh God, the coffee." And then he broke. My strong son, my rancher who'd faced down wolves and blizzards and drought, broke like a child. Tears rolled down his gaunt cheeks and his whole body shook with sobs. "I believed her, Ma, when she said you were controlling. When she said you didn't approve of her. When she said you were trying to come between us. I believed every word. I pushed you away. I made you feel unwelcome in the house you built, in the ranch you gave me." I climbed onto the bed beside him, careful of his weakened body, and held him like I had when he was small. "She was very good at lying, son. She fooled everyone for a long time." "Not everyone." His voice was muffled against my shoulder. "Not Rosa. Not old Easy. Not you in the end." He pulled back to look at me, his face ravaged by more than just poison. "Ma, I'm so sorry. How can you even look at me? How can you forgive me?" I took his face in both my hands. "Because you're my son. Because a mother's love doesn't end when it's tested. It grows stronger. You were manipulated, Jamie. She spent 5 years poisoning your mind before she started poisoning your body. I should have seen it. I should have known. She was a professional. She'd done this before to other men. You weren't foolish. You were human. You trusted because that's what good people do." We held each other for a long time, both of us crying for the years lost, the words unsaid, the distance that should never have been. The door opened and Rosa entered, her face softening when she saw us together. "He will recover fully," she said, her accent thick with emotion. "The antidote worked. His body is young and strong. In a few weeks, he will be himself again." Jamie reached out a hand to her. "Thank you, Rosa. You saved my life." Rosa came to the bedside and took his hand. "Your mother saved your life. I just helped her do it." A knock on the door. Sheriff Caleb stood there, hat in his hands. "Jamie, when you're strong enough, we'll need your testimony. Judge Blackwood arrives in 2 weeks for the trial." Jamie nodded, his jaw setting with something I hadn't seen in years. Determination. "I'll testify. I want her to pay for everything." When someone you love hurts you because they were manipulated by someone else, how do you forgive them? Is their pain an excuse or just an explanation? And when they finally see the truth, does their guilt make the reconciliation sweeter or just more complicated? 2 months later, I walked into the Elk Ridge town meeting hall with my son's arm linked through mine. The room had been transformed into a makeshift courtroom, benches lined up like church pews, a table for Judge Blackwood at the front, another for the territorial prosecutor. Every seat was filled. The whole town had come to witness frontier justice. Victoria sat at the defendant's table in a plain gray dress, her blonde hair dull without its usual shine. 2 months in a jail cell had stripped away the polish, the charm, the beauty that had been her weapons. She looked small, ordinary, nothing like the woman who'd nearly destroyed my family. Judge Thaddeus Blackwood was a stern man with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. He'd ridden the circuit for 20 years, bringing law to places that barely had it. The trial moved swiftly. Rosa testified first, her voice steady, as she explained the symptoms, the poison, the samples she'd saved. She held up the arsenic tin, the vomit jars, spoke in clear medical terms that left no doubt. This was systematic poisoning over 8 months, designed to look like natural illness. If I had not suspected, if Doña Martha had not discovered the truth, Jamie Brennan would be dead within days. Samuel Chen testified about the rat poison purchases. Old Easy described seeing Victoria put something in Jamie's coffee. Henry Blackstone, looking like a whipped dog, confirmed every detail of the conspiracy in exchange for a reduced sentence. Victoria's lawyer, a nervous man from Cheyenne, tried to claim it was all circumstantial, that the evidence could be explained that his client was a devoted wife being persecuted by a jealous mother-in-law. The jury didn't even blink. Then they called Jamie. He walked to the witness chair slowly, still weak, but holding himself straight. His voice was quiet but clear as he described the years of manipulation, the isolation from me, the coffee every morning, the growing sickness. "Did you love her?" the prosecutor asked. Jamie looked at Victoria for the first time since entering the room. "I loved the person I thought she was, but that person never existed. It was a mask, a character designed to deceive me. And now, what do you feel for her now?" Jamie's voice was steady. "Pity. I pity someone who can live like that without real love, without genuine connection. Just calculating, always calculating. What an empty life that must be." I saw something flicker in Victoria's eyes then. Not guilt, not remorse, but something close to pain, as if his contempt hurt worse than his hatred ever could. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes. When they returned, the foreman stood. "On all charges of attempted murder, conspiracy to commit fraud and theft, we find the defendant guilty." Judge Blackwood's gavel fell like thunder. "Victoria Brennan," he said, his voice filling the hall, "you are a predator of the worst kind. You have violated the sacred bonds of marriage, attempted murder for financial gain, and brought shame upon every honest woman trying to build a life in this territory. I hereby sentence you to 25 years hard labor at the Wyoming Territorial Prison in Laramie." Victoria's face went white. Then she screamed, a sound of pure rage that made children cry and women gasp. "This isn't over. I'll appeal, I'll get out, and when I do—" The deputies grabbed her arms. She fought like a wildcat, spitting curses, threatening everyone in the room. They dragged her toward the door, her feet scrambling for purchase. As she passed our bench, she locked eyes with me one last time. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "You'll never—" "I already have," I said quietly. They hauled her out into the Wyoming sunshine, into a wagon that would take her to Laramie and 25 years of breaking rocks and hard labor. The courtroom erupted in quiet conversation. Women embraced, men nodded grimly. Justice had been served frontier style. Jamie squeezed my hand. "It's really over, Ma." "Yes, son, it's over." Spring came to Wyoming like a promise kept. 6 months had passed since the trial, and the Brennan Ranch looked different now. Not just the 3 small cabins we'd built on the eastern pasture, or the garden Rosa had planted with medicinal herbs. It was something you could feel in the air, hope where there'd been despair. Life where death had nearly won. I stood on the porch of the main house, my house again, the one Jamie had insisted I move back into. "This was always yours, Ma," he'd said. I was just keeping it warm. Down by the new cabins I could see them. Sarah Mitchell and her 3 children who'd arrived 2 weeks ago with nothing but the clothes on their backs and bruises hidden under long sleeves. Her brother-in-law had tried to take her dead husband's land, and when she refused, he'd used his fists to convince her. She'd heard about us 3 towns over. "They say Mother Brennan helps women who have nowhere else to go," she'd told me that first night, her voice shaking. "They say she understands." I did understand. I understood what it meant to feel powerless, invisible, dismissed. I understood what it meant to find your strength when everything tried to break you. Now Sarah's children were playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the spring wind. Her youngest, a boy of 5, was learning to rope from old EZ, who had more patience in his weathered hands than any schoolteacher. Jamie was by the corral working with a young mare, his movements sure and strong. Completely recovered, though he'd never forget what poison felt like in his veins. He'd never marry again, he'd told me. "I'm done trusting my judgment with women, Ma. Besides, I have you and I have work to do here." The sanctuary. Our purpose. Rosa came up the porch steps, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. She settled beside me in the other rocking chair, and we sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "Word is spreading," she said finally. I heard in town yesterday a woman in Cheyenne is asking how to find Mother Brennan. Her husband beats her. She has 2 little ones. Mother Brennan. That's what they called me now. Not the meddling old woman, not the pathetic widow. Not nothing. We'll make room, I said. Rosa smiled. You have turned pain into purpose, mi amiga. Not many can do this. I thought about that for a long moment, watching the sun sink toward the western mountains, painting everything golden rose. I almost lost everything, I said quietly. My son, my home, my hope. For 5 years I made myself small and visible because I thought that's what a good mother did. I thought if I just stayed quiet, stayed out of the way, everything would be fine. But it wasn't fine. No, it took almost losing Jamie to realize that being small doesn't keep you safe. It just makes you easier to hurt? I turned to look at her. But I found something I didn't know I had: the will to fight, the strength to stand up, and now we help other women find that same strength. Rosa raised her coffee cup. To strong women, I touched my cup to hers. To women who refuse to be invisible. The sun dipped lower and the ranch glowed in that magical light that only exists for a few minutes each day. Sarah was calling her children in for supper. Jamie waved to me from the corral. Old Easy was showing the boy how to coil his rope properly. This was my legacy now. Not just land or cattle or money, but this women finding safety, children finding peace, a community built on the understanding that everyone deserves to be seen, to be heard, to be protected. They'd called me nothing once. They'd called me invisible, irrelevant, a foolish old woman who didn't understand the world. But a mother's love is never nothing, and now neither am I. The Wyoming sun sets different now, warmer somehow, like it knows what we survived. I sit on this porch every evening watching women I've never met find their voices again. Sarah's teaching her daughter to braid rope. Rosa's showing a young widow which herbs stop bleeding, which ones ease pain. Jamie's out there with old Easy mending fence line like his father taught him, like he'll teach the boys who come here running from violence they couldn't name. They call me Mother Brennan now. Not the meddling old woman. Not nothing. It took poison and betrayal and a desperate ride through dawn mist to teach me what the frontier had been trying to show me all along. Survival isn't about making yourself small. It's about standing your ground when the wolves circle. It's about trusting the instinct that screams danger when everyone else hears wedding bells. It's about fighting for what you love, even when your hands shake and your voice breaks and they call you crazy for seeing what they refuse to believe. Victoria's breaking rocks in Laramie. 23 years left on her sentence. But I'm building something that'll outlast us all, a place where invisible women discover they were warriors all along, just waiting for someone to hand them a sword. The frontier doesn't forgive weakness, but it rewards those who refuse to disappear. And I'm done disappearing. If my story stirred something in you, if you've ever been called too old, too emotional, or nothing, when your instincts screamed truth, leave a comment below. Tell me about the moment you stopped making yourself small. Your story might be the sword another woman needs to pick up. Subscribe for more tales of frontier women who refuse to fade into the dust. We're still here. We're still fighting. And we're not done yet.